Hello and welcome to the Brains podcast with me, your host, Michal. Today I'm joined by a very, very special guest. I am joined by Kathy Cook, and we are here to dive into children's behaviour, family support, and how we can better understand and respond to the needs of young people. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah,
Great.
really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I'd love to start with your own journey because this work all feels deeply personal to you as well as, of course, professional. You've built now and then coaching from both professional experience and your own personal lived experience, right? As a parent, but looking back, what were some of the key moments that pushed you to create something and build something of your own? And what values really sit at the heart and at the core of this coaching?
Yeah, so obviously I was a teacher previous to this, and I just think at the moment we're forgetting that they're children first, and there's such a pressure to get the standards and get the scores that we're forgetting that, that human level needs to come before anything. So for me, the values really need to underlie with that human connection, really inspiring people to feel valued and feel recognised, regardless of any issues or, whether we need to give that extra support. I think it should be there. And for me, I just felt like I was fighting the system and, having to fight for the children that when parents are telling me they can't afford new shoes because it's the difference between putting a meal on the table or new shoes. And I just thought, we're forgetting what we need to be remembering for these families. So I really wanted to make it about really listening to the parents, that it shouldn't be the ones who are shouting the loudest that get the support. So that's when I looked at what we could do to offer that support. So it's not about judgment or blame, it's about real connection and really offering that support before we get to crisis point. I think the systems are just very strained, and it's only the ones who are at the top at that crisis that are getting that support. So I'd like to be there as a preventative level. So that's what kind of encouraged me to go down my own route, because I could see the needs of the gaps that are being missed.
One thing that really stood out was the fact that you said there's no such thing as like a bad child, right?
Yeah.
And behavior is often maybe just misunderstood than intentional. Can you unpack a little and share what you think we should be looking at in terms of behavior and how we should be looking at it differently?
I think if we reframe behaviour as actually it's a tool that children are learning to communicate their needs. So, it must be exhausting for children to be like, hello, I'm here. If they could have the words, I'm sure they would use them. So, I think if we actually look at being inquisitive and really understanding what are they trying to tell us rather than what's wrong. So, it's just another communication tool that they are learning and have learned that that's the best way to get the attention. So I think, again, it's really encouraging parents to be curious, encouraging staff members to be curious and understand that actually, if there is an easier way to do it, I'm sure they would choose that way. Um, but for whatever reason, that's the best way that they're getting the attention that they're needing. So, yeah, rather than kind of looking at the bad behavior or the disengagement, why, you need us to think about why that's happening. We need to kind of reframe it from where are they going wrong to actually what could we do to support them. So yeah, I think if we could rephrase how we view children and take away that blame element, then I think we're halfway there. So
100%. I like that. It's like, what could we be doing better to more understand them?
yes,
We are the adults in the room.
exactly.
I want to touch on something that you recently did in your Brains magazine article, which I'm sure will resonate with a lot of families. You spoke about the experience of not meeting the threshold when asking for support and how frustrating that can be. What did that moment teach you about the gaps in the system, and how did it shape the way you now offer support to people who need it?
Yeah. So it was a really personal level that we needed it for our family, and for us it was really bad, but it wasn't bad enough. So, I just think how many other parents feel this is, what else do we need to do to ask for that support? And, it's also like makes me question what levels and parameters are we using to say, yes, you meet the threshold, you don't. And I don't think it should come to that. I think, again, it comes to the squeaky wheels get oiled. The ones who are the loudest are the ones who get the support, but that isn't always how some people ask for support. So, what about the introverts who just try and take everything on, the people pleasers that again forget about what they need and try and put everybody else's needs first? So, yeah, that really taught me that thresholds are great, but in a very pressured system, it's only the high levels of needs that are getting that support that they need. So I would really like to make it a system that's about not waiting for crisis point and actually offering that support as a preventative and proactive rather than reactive.
100%. And I want to talk about your take on the labels like naughty or disengaged because, that might be just a lazy way of looking at it instead of us again, these are adults saying like, what are we missing? What can we be learning from this? And what changes do you notice when adults start to take that approach, both as teachers in schools or as the parents at home?
hmm Yeah. So I think if we all have those keywords that kind of trigger us. And, for some, it might be, well, I was the naughty kid, or I was the troublesome, disengaged, I wasn't the person that found school interesting. And I think by automatically accepting that, I think we're just thinking, well, that's okay, I'll just step back. So if we can allow people to be, again, offer that curiosity, then we're allowing that space to be actually, who am I? And where do I fit in this system? Because I think if we're automatically ruling people as naughty, then there's so many children that, well, I go to naughty school, which means that they are struggling in mainstream school, but then feel, well, I've been missed out for whatever reason. So we're not going to get the best from them. So I think, we're so quick to label, whether it be a diagnosis or whether it just be those throwaway words, they really have that impact on a person's identity. I'd really like to kind of look at how we as adults can offer that space for a child to be a child again.
If we zoom out a little right now, there's clearly a lot of pressure on young people and on families and parents in particular. From what you're seeing on the ground, what are some of the biggest challenges that you feel are still not being discussed enough right now?
hmm I think, again, it comes down to that blame game. It's very easy to say, well, they're obviously not parenting very well, or you should just try this, or you should just try that. And I think sometimes we're dismissing when some people are just saying, this is really tough. And it is really tough. Even as a teacher, I remember thinking, how am I going to meet all these individual needs when I wanted to try the best that I could do? And I think as parents, we're really, really kind of pressured to be the best we can be, but also kind of under a spotlight of what are people going to say? What if somebody judges me and I'm struggling in the moment? Then, I think if we could be supportive for one another and allow that space to be like, yeah, I get you. I remember my daughter having a tantrum on the floor in a shop and somebody went, you've got the patience of a saint. And I was like, thank you for that. I really needed that in that moment rather than someone just going, oh, it just, I think we need to remember we're humans. If we can look at humans helping humans, what a lovely world we'd be in.
You know what I mean? It's hard enough out here without feeling like you're being judged or, "Oh,
Yes,
what are they saying? My child's crying. Do they now think I'm a bad parent?" Do you know what I mean?
exactly.
If we're more understanding. But you've also spoken about your concerns around exclusion rates and how some children are being pushed out of education altogether. Can you talk us through what's happening there and why this is something we should all really be paying closer attention to? I know you mentioned going to naughty schools, but this is talking about completely off out of the grid.
Yes. So, one of the first families I helped with my coaching was a parent whose 5-year old was going to be permanently excluded from his primary school. And they rang me because they were like, we know our child, and this isn't the child in school, is not being the child at school that we see at home. And they really fought to get that level of support, and how brave it was for them to kind of say, we're really struggling. But again, it got to crisis point. Um, he is now fully successfully working with his friends in school, which is so lovely to see. But I just think if we are excluding children, who else is there to kind of support them? And for me, it's that looking at where do they get that sense of belonging? Because that's all we need. That's all we're looking for as humans is that sense of belonging. And if we can't get that in our schools, who else is there left to pick it up? So I've looked really closely at the youth justice system and the correlation between children that have additional needs or have struggles and the exclusion rates, they go hand in hand. And then if we look at further down the line adults that have struggled, these are the ones that actually, if we can get the support early, not wait for adulthood, I think it would have such an amazing knock-on effect for adulthood as well as now. So I think we need to get the systems right in for society, really.
Yeah, get it right once and for all now so that we're not trying to put these preventative measures in place and also create, how would you say, more well rounded adults that don't
Yes.
end up in these systems. But you touched upon the youth justice system. What do you think is being missed early on that could really actually prevent all of this and prevent that trajectory?
So for me, I think it's that sense of connection.
Hmm.
That's what they're seeking. And whether it's that they haven't felt that they can communicate in a way that is the right way of doing things. So I think we are losing them when they don't feel that they're being recognised or valued. And my concern is just how much there's child exploitation happening. It's happening really close to home. I hadn't realised how much gangs was an issue, the county lines is an issue, because at the end of the day, children will seek the attention, whether it's good or bad, that's what they're seeking. And that is being exploited. And that is a real big passion of mine to kind of make sure that shouldn't be an option. So on a Friday, I'm supporting children at a local alternative provision. And the stories of these young people are sad, but equally so inspiring. They've really had to overcome a lot of hurdles to attend the school that they're attending. But it shouldn't be a fight, and it shouldn't be a well done, you've passed that test, you can now come to this school. So, like I say, let's remove some of the hurdles and let's have a bit more curiosity and look at the pathway that's happened for these children to be where they are. 9 times out of 10, there's been a big battle before they've got to a setting, and that's not right, in my opinion.
From a solutions point of view, I'd love to ask you, what does better support look like in practice when it comes to what meaningful and effective support looks like when it comes to the family and the child?
So yeah, I think it's all about that perspective taking. So bringing it back to what is the child saying, what is the child asking for, because they don't always have the communication tools. And that's something that they learn over time. And we forget that actually things like emotional regulation and all those skills are often forgotten. And if we can teach those skills, allow them to recognize that they're going to have difficulties, that is part of life, and how we can overcome them so it doesn't get to a kind of built up system. And I think for adults, it's again looking at the perspective taking, that curiosity to feel valued and feel that they're trying the best with the tools they've got. So I think again, if we can support parents to go, this is really tough, and then allow for that space for parents to go, yep, I've been there, I hear you, and look at the supportive element. So I've kind of set up a Facebook group so parents can feel that they're being supported. Have other parents that'll go, this was really tough. I wanted to just go shopping, but this happened. Or even the success of, I managed to go shopping today, and we didn't manage. We've actually managed a full shop without anybody screaming, um, because we are all trying our best, and I think that's forgotten. So as a solutions focused, I think just upskilling people and even just having the pat on the back to go, well done, that was really tough. Next time we could try this, and just being open to go, let's try this next time. Because, all emotions are okay. And I think if we actually look at allowing and accepting how we can support emotional support, emotional recognition, we're not then stifling what's happening for children and that pressure of we have to be the best all the time, because that's just not, it's just not, it's not how it happens in real life.
I want to ask you because earlier you mentioned about children learning to mask quite early on, and I'm thinking maybe there's parents listening, like, okay, I didn't even know this started early. What signs should parents look for? And at what age does this masking, when do they learn to mask?
hmm I think for me, it really depends on how much pressure they feel and how accepted all emotions are. So, they say that most of our fundamental emotional support happens up to the age of 7. So I think those really early interventions are so key. And if we can support that support for parents to recognise that how we interact really early on does have the kind of sense of safety and security that children are seeking with their parents. So even later on, if we can say to parents, allow them to recognize that it's really tough and that we're not all perfect. And I really encourage parents to kind of explain to their young person when they've had a bad day. So we often talk about the chimp brain. So that's Professor Steve Peters' chimp paradox. and that we all have a chimp, that it's kind of right back to the caveman era. And if we can acknowledge as an adult of that was really stressful and my chimp was jumping up and down. So how was your chimp? And we can start to recognize that there are things that can kind of trigger everybody. And there's going to be some days that are better than others. So let's normalize it and not make it out to be a really big deal that we have to feel that pressure of this is the perfect life, the kind of Facebook, Instagram life of, oh, look at me. Where actually, I think if we just own it and go, that was tough, I think that again sets up that reality of life, the good, the bad, and just the normal. Yeah, let's stop trying to put pressure to be the perfect family.
And the kid would feel that as well, and it's good. So, from what I'm hearing, you're kind of just letting the child know that all emotions are okay
Yes.
and it's safe to talk about it. So you'd say this chimp that you'd bring that theory in if anyone asked you how could I introduce feelings and a feelings talk
Yes.
to
Yeah.
kids. That would be one method. Is there any other little tips and tricks that you could give any parents listening?
Yeah, and I think it is just allowing them to recognize it. So whether they talk about it as that funny feeling in their tummy, or whether they kind of go, oh, whatever the child's name is, they'll sometimes say, oh, I'm in that child's name in that world, or they'll kind of say, I'm feeling a bit fuzzy. So it's really being in tune with what the child says, using the way they describe it, because then they feel heard. So, kind of starting from their level and then upskilling it from there, I think that's what works the most because, like I say, they want to feel heard, they want to feel accepted. And again, let's normalize it that there are some really stressful situations. That is life. And it's not about just kind of going, I am a stressed out person. It's just that was a stressful situation. So today might have been a bit tricky. It might have felt like a 2 out of 10 day. Brilliant. That was yesterday. Let's look at tomorrow. We've got a fresh start. Let's try again and let's learn from it. And that's something I'm really kind of instilling, and that's part of the motto now then. It's kind of focusing on now, but growing from then. So what can we learn from the past that we can move on to the future and kind of empower one another?
100%. And also, I really like this notion of you're not defined by your feelings. You might have had a bad day, but that doesn't mean you can't handle stress. That doesn't define you. Again, that was then, this is
Yes.
now. Let's look over our shoulder, but don't live there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really like that. I love your mindset and stuff. But I would love to talk about the project that you're developing right now, particularly your support package for military families. What inspired you to focus on this group in particular, and what are some of the specific challenges that the children of military families face day to day? Because a lot of people may not know.
No. So my partner, he's ex-military.
Hmm.
And I saw just how much he kind of sacrificed for his own family. And he was deployed all around the world. And, that really did put a strain on his family. And it really made me just kind of look at what can we do to support the families. So a lot of his friends are ex military. And 9 times out of 10, the parents have separated. So it's, a blended family. And, that is tricky in itself. So his sister is currently being deployed in the Falkland Islands, and she's left behind a 5-year-old son who has really struggled. And I wanted to offer that support. And when I looked at what support is there already, I just realised, okay, where is the support then? So I've kind of built this like robust package that looks at what happens before deployment, what looks at like while the parent has been deployed, and what looks at what the normal looks like when they come back. So I think if we can like build it up in steps, and it's about educating the parents to support the child. So it's a kind of joined up approach to kind of look at again how we can be curious about what the children are really curious about. So my dad lost his mum at 5, and in his world, his mum died because she stubbed her toe on a door frame. And he hadn't realised that, obviously it was cancer. But because he was from a very young age, he kind of joined the dots. And as an adult, you think, how on earth did you get from that to that? And I don't want that to happen for military families. I don't want them to think, well, mummy's gone abroad, so that means she doesn't want me. Or they've gone to another place because, you know, their job's more important than me. And I think if we can look at how curious children are and just how sometimes it baffles me when you think, wow, being in schools, I had one child who thought you put your hand up because you need the toilet. You didn't realize you put your hand up to ask for help or all the other things that putting your hand up means. So I think we need to really look at allowing children to be curious, ask the questions they need to ask, because otherwise they make up their own versions. And then as an adult, they'll go, I really thought that was the answer. So, let's look at that support. And I think at the minute, you know, there's so much just expectation of, well, the dad was in the army, so I'm going to be in the army, or my mum was in the Air Force. And there's so much expectation of that is just the norm. But actually, let's not kind of allow for a generational stifling to happen. And that's kind of where the military family packages come from.
No, brilliant work. And you're currently trialing that right now. I'm curious to know, what are you already seeing from this experience and putting it out there? And why do you think this kind of support matters now more than ever?
So I've reached out to the welfare team who were really keen to trial it. So again, I was really curious to know what support was there already and just how having this robust package will allow for parents to be curious and kind of feel that it isn't a judgment. It is purely there as a supportive, preventative resource that we can look at offering that, answering the questions, but offering that the tools that we kind of expect that children have. And, I think because we're quite a bravado country, that toxic masculinity really is toxic. And sometimes within that military basis, it's well, that's just the norm. And it isn't the norm. So let's just allow for that space to empower people, to educate people, and share the message of all emotions are okay. Let's look at how we can support it.
I love the messaging, Kathy, and I'm really curious to know, because if I look at the red thread of all your work, there's a real clear sense of purpose in everything you do. But I want to know, how do you stay so committed to the cause? Because especially at times, I feel like the system can be very hard to navigate. How do you keep your purpose?
I think that's one of the reasons why I needed to step away from the systems. Obviously, I was a teacher, and at the moment, I'm kind of allowed the space to go, yeah, I'm really interested in this work, and I'd really like to push and empower other people in the systems. So for me, it's seeing the small differences, that having that space to advocate for people and to empower people makes the huge difference. When I have parents go, you work magically, I really don't. I just go from the ground level, start from the child and build themselves up. And alongside that, having that time with the parents as well to go, right, explain to me how this week's gone. Explain to me what you've noticed this week. So they can start to reflect and feel empowered themselves. So it's not about me kind of super nannying coming in and fixing things. It's about the whole family dynamic. And that's something that I really do look for, the small differences, because if we can see the small things, before you know it, it's a huge thing that you'd forget just how difficult things were at the beginning to recognize how things are now. So, yeah, like I say, it's the small things that kind of build up to the big things.
Right. And if someone's listening to this, maybe a parent or a guardian, and they reach out to Now and Then Coaching, what does that first step look like, and how does that journey go with you?
So, for me, I always offer that consultation. That's always a free service that can just even be, you know, this is what I'm finding at the moment. Is this normal? Absolutely, it's normal. And it's, no judgment whatsoever. And really, it's as much as I can, I want it to be that there's tools and resources out there, and I'll try and signpost people to kind of feel that they can take the decision. Um, they're kind of an informed decision. Then it's then up to them if they want to kind of feel that they need that extra level of support that, you know, having that real one-to-one support can offer. So I'm looking at some group packages too, just because the one-to-one I love, but it's really tiring because I really do want to put my heart and soul into everything and, see the difference. And you can't do that as like 10 a week or something. So, I really want to kind of look after my own space and obviously be there for my own children as well. And that's something, again, that being my own business really allows me to go, do you know what? I need to take my daughter to school today, and then I can pick up everything else. So it's kind of just helping me to practice what I preach.
You can almost go back to that moment where your inner child got hurt, and that defines who the adult becomes then ultimately, and then you have to go back and do that work to heal it,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned about the teacher being there. Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I remember when I was doing my teacher training, they asked us to think back to the most influential teacher we remember. And for me, it wasn't the teacher that kind of taught me my times tables or the teacher that like taught us how to like trigonometry. It was the teacher that gave us the time. I remember braiding her hair on the playground and just gave us that time and space because you just felt that connection. And I think that's something that the pressures of the education system are losing. And I just think let's look at what else we're missing in the education system. Let's look at how we go back to a human level. To kind of build up those fundamentals. And I think often I look at other education systems and think we're expecting something and children aren't even in school yet, in other countries. So what can we learn from other countries? Let's be more curious about what works and go right back to basics again.
Yeah, you said let's look at what we're missing in the system. Would you say that humanity and being more human is one of those things? Because I
Yes.
remember as well with teachers, I would sit with them during lunch and
Mm-hmm.
just being in their company and listening to them speak, and you felt so important.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear your things. What else do you think is missing?
So I remember, again, teacher training, you have to be that strong person in front of the classroom. Don't show your emotions. Don't kind of show that you're struggling, which I get. But equally, I just think that kind of stifles the teacher to be kind of have that expert position. But I think there are times when it's okay to say, this is tough. I've had some schools where there's been some really tragic situations where a pupil has died or, families have gone through some really traumatic times. And if we can't just stop and go, this was tough, how do we expect children to manage? I just think there's so much human first, without a doubt, is what I think we're missing.
I love that human first. And like I said, when I think about the work that you're doing and the families that you're supporting, what kind of impact do you ultimately hope that your work has on children and families and the system as a whole?
So I've seen the impact that can happen if we lose somebody within the system. I taught a young person who was 5 and saw him on the front of the local newspaper, who will probably still be in prison now. And I remember thinking back and thinking, how on earth has that 5-year-old ended up there? Because the young person I remember is certainly not the person that's being depicted on the front of that newspaper. So if I can stop one person from going within any kind of justice system, I feel like that's my level of success. Let's allow people to feel that they are part of society and not feel that that is the only alternative. So I think if we can get the connection and make everyone feel valued, then we're not kind of having an us and them. Let's just all sit around the table, world peace here. But, I think it's so important. We shouldn't be losing anybody in any of the systems. The systems are really strained. So let's look at what we can do to support one another and not have to wait for a diagnosis or wait for a waiting list before we actually feel heard. So for me, I think it is just looking at how we can offer that curiosity, offer that empathy again, because I think that's, again, really missed in a lot of situations. And then, that curiosity to go, okay, how can I help? Even if it's just let's hold the door open for somebody. Let's, smile at somebody. If everybody did that at least once a day, I think that would be a wonderful world to live in.
Wise words. Everyone listen. Obviously, you're coaching now, and then coaching is available for everyone, every parent, every guardian. But who would you say would be your target audience, or who do you find coming to you the most, and what would their problems or situations be?
Yeah, so for me, it's the parents who feel that they're firefighting at the moment. They kind of feel that they're the only ones who get it for their child, or they just feel they don't know how to unpick things for their child's behaviour. So I'm trying to help them to decode what they're trying to say and offer them the skills and the tools to know how to support them and how to even just feel that they've got this again, because it can be a really lonely journey and we shouldn't feel like that as parents. It should be a collective. So, that's the kind of target audience, really.
And that's what Now and Then Coaching offers them.
Yes.
One-to-ones, groups.
Yes.
Incredible. I get the teacher vibe.
Yeah.
I get the teacher vibe in the most complimentary way.
Oh,
I
thank
think a
you.
teacher should be soft and kind and
Yeah.
warm and understanding. So it's no surprise that that's what you are.
Yeah, yeah. And like I say, that kind of was why the company's built how it's built with the colours and even the lotus flower. It's kind of emerging from, murky waters, but it's still beautiful. When you're ready to emerge, it's kind of, yeah, knowing. So I've used flowers a lot in my analogy. So when I was doing my master's in psychology, I looked at, I think it was W.D. Boyce, and he said about dandelions and orchids and how dandelions can thrive anywhere. They don't need that support, but orchids need that nurture and support. And it's just like personalities. We have different personalities. We need different levels of support. And that's what we need to remember. We're not all the same. We all need, we need different things at different times.
Yeah, and every child is unique and has different needs. And
Yes.
as you say, maybe we just all need to be the adult in the room more and spark our curiosity.
Yes. Yes.
On the Brains podcast, we ask all of our guests this one question, so you can take a little minute to think about it. But we always ask, what mindset do you credit most for the success that you've got today?
Perseverance. It's not been plain sailing, and it hasn't gone without judgment thinking, wow, she's left a secure job, she's left her marriage, there are times that people have gone, oh, I think she's broken. And it isn't, it's just me going, I don't agree, and I can carry on pretending, but actually I'm losing myself. So yeah, perseverance. It's not a pretty thing, but it's so important.
100%. I love that. And now, after our conversation rounds up, what would you hope that the viewer or the listener takes away from our chat today?
For me, I would say connection. How important is it to connect with people around you? Even that, looking at how fortunate you are to have the people around you, or if you don't feel you've got that fortunate support around you, it is there. Just knowing where to look for it. So yeah, connection is really important in this world.
Thank you so much. This has been, it's been educational, it's been eye-opening, but it's been really enjoyable. Thank you for being so open and personal about everything.
Thank you. No, it's been amazing.